It's November 2nd, 2021. We're in Chanhassen, Minnesota at the library, and this is former Marine Gary Nash, and I'm his wife, Margie. Question number 1.
Well, first of all, I have a correction.
Okay,
I'm not a former Marine. I'm a Marine.
okay. All right, tell us about your family and childhood.
Well, I grew up in Southwest Minneapolis, middle-class neighborhood. Parents, highly unusual in Minnesota in 1940 to meet anybody who was divorced. And so it was everybody was an intact family that I knew. Mom, Dad, an older brother, George. He was 8 years older than I was, and he went into the service when he graduated from high school, and I was but 10 years old. And then my sister, Natalie, Nan, she's deceased, and she left right after high school as well. My younger brother, Steve, he also left after leaving the University of Minnesota, even though he had a hockey scholarship. And then I was number 3 of 4.
All right, tell us about your education.
I went to Robert Fulton Grade School for 9 years, and there I met Margie in the 7th grade, and then on to Southwest High School for 4 years, and then the University of Minnesota, and I graduated with a degree, a major in communications, speech, and a minor in psychology.
What did your parents and siblings think about your joining the service?
Oh, they were very proud that I was going to be a United States Marine. On the other side, they knew that I'd probably be going to Vietnam, so they were a little concerned about that. But they were very proud that I was a United States Marine.
Were you drafted or enlisted?
Neither. I was not drafted, and I did not enlist in the Marine Corps. I went to Officer Candidate School, and after OCS, I was commissioned as a Marine. So I was neither drafted nor enlisted.
Tell us why you chose the Marine Corps.
Oh boy. Basically, my whole life, people said, you should be a Marine. And it was just my resolve and I'm going to get the job done, and I would like to be a part of the best, and nothing against the other branches of the service. I was just absolutely convinced that the Marines were the best, and I wanted to be a part of the United States Marine Corps.
What training and schools did you attend?
All right, I went to Quantico, Virginia for Officer Candidate School, and upon completion, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, and then went on to the basic school, which is 6 months of intense training, infantry oriented, where every young Marine lieutenant will determine his MOS, military occupational specialty.
What was your first duty station?
My first duty station was Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and that was terrific. I was a rifle platoon commander, and after 6 months there, January through June, our battalion was then afloat for 6 months in the Mediterranean, and I couldn't believe that the United States taxpayer was paying me to be a part of the United States Marine Corps aboard this ship for 6 months, where a third of the time was at training anchorages. I've been to places perhaps you've never even heard of. 1/3 of the time at sea, and 1/3 of the time in Liberty ports. I mean, how else was this kid from Minnesota gonna get to Greece and Cyprus and Mallorca and Libya, places like that?
Did you receive any specialized training?
Yes, I did. After returning from the Mediterranean cruise, our battalion was broken up, and unless they were already a Vietnam veteran, we were probably all going to go to Vietnam. But I did make two intermediate stops. All Marines went to Camp Pendleton for a staging battalion prior to going to Vietnam. But I also had another intermediate step. I was privileged to be one of 15 Marines going to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for special warfare school.
What was the hardest part of your training?
Absolutely mental. The physical was never a challenge for me. I prided myself in being fit before it was fashionable, I'll say. And so the physical part of the Marine Corps was never a challenge for me. But especially in officer candidate school, they knew that if you were going to be, especially an infantry officer in combat, you better be able to have anything they can throw at you. And so they made life difficult, and it was a challenge.
Tell us about your promotions.
Promotions. Upon commissioning, I was wearing the little brown bars, gold bars of a second lieutenant. After 18 months, which was standard, I was promoted to first lieutenant, went from gold bars to silver bars. And then, people find this hard to believe today, but I only spent 9 months as a first lieutenant before I was promoted to captain and wore the railroad tracks. And that was exceptional. The good news is, boy, I'm a captain in the United States Marine Corps and getting captain's pay. The bad news is, I don't think there are a lot of first lieutenants, unless you're prior enlisted, just spending 9 months in service as a first lieutenant before you're promoted to captain. I'm not totally convinced I was absolutely ready to be a rifle company commander.
Adaptation, was it difficult or easy?
The mental part was again difficult. The physical part was easy, and because of my strong resolve and wanting to be a Marine, the adaptation was not difficult.
Talk about your wartime service. Where?
Okay, where? Vietnam was divided into 4 core areas. Roman numeral 1 was from the demilitarized zone to the Central Highlands. Roman numeral 2, the Central Highlands. Roman numeral 3, the Saigon area. And Roman numeral 4 was the Delta area. And because Roman numeral 1 was a capital I, we referred to Roman numeral 1 as I Corps. The others were 2, 3, and 4 Corps, but we were an I Corps, the northernmost part of South Vietnam.
Tell us about some recollections.
Oh, recollections. Ooh. A lot of good, some not so good. It was tough to lose friends, and perhaps it'll come up later. I just happened to have a plaque with the rubbings of 5 good friends who lost their lives in Vietnam.
Obviously, you were in a war zone. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Actually, virtually anybody who served in Vietnam can say they served in a war zone, because you didn't know where it was coming from. Even the soldiers who were stationed in Saigon were still in danger. I Corps was especially perhaps tenuous, and then the 2 Corps are in the Central Highlands, because the Ho Chi Minh Trail came out of North Vietnam down through Laos, and then they branched off, and a lot of the North Vietnamese army came through I Corps and the Central Highlands 2 Corps area. So I'm sorry, the question again?
It was, were you in a war zone? Talk
Yes,
about the
okay,
war zone.
was war, yes, definitely in a war zone, and the only Vietnam veterans who really considered themselves safe all the time was an Air Force base called Cam Ranh Bay, and it was right on the South China Sea, and their perimeter was so far out that maybe mortar rounds could hit them, but it was the most protected area of South Vietnam. So virtually anybody who served in Vietnam can say they were in a combat zone, except possibly Cam Ranh Bay.
How did combat change you?
Oh, combat changed me. Certainly have a better appreciation for life. It's tough when 20-year-olds and 20 to 30-year-olds are dying well before their time. And so I definitely have a much better appreciation for life. I feel that I'm a more religious person as a result. And but on the negative side, I think I'm more guarded. I'm a little reluctant to accept people and circumstances until I'm a little more familiar with that person or that environment. Until that time, I'm probably a little guarded.
Do you recall any humorous events?
I do. In fact, I submitted this to the Marine Corps Times and actually Reader's Digest, but for reasons that will become obvious, it was not published. But true story, this was 31 January 1968, and the reason I can tell you the specific date is because it was the first day of the Tet Offensive. It was daybreak, and we had been rocketed and mortared, our base camp, and our S2 intelligence officer and S3 operations officer assembled all the officers, and those that were not assigned to the Combat Information Center were going to be leading patrols. And so I was briefed, and then I gathered the members of the patrol and briefed them on what we were going to do. Had a map overlay. We had our communications established, told them what they were going to take, and we were exiting the base camp, and we were going through an open area, and then through, I'll just call it a heavily vegetated area. So we're getting varied terrain, and we don't know what's out there, because after we exited from there, we came onto a road, and then as we headed back toward our base camp, we were going to go through a little village that had always been friendly to us. But now that the Viet Cong and NVA, North Vietnamese Army, had made their presence known, perhaps the attitude of the villagers might be different. We did not know. So before we entered the Ville, I put out my security, and I briefed everybody else, and I said, okay, I know the reputation of this Ville, and I don't want to be losing any Marines. I don't want anybody stopping off in one of the village huts. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think you can surmise what was going on. And so called my perimeter, my security back in, and we had proper distancing, and we walked through on both sides of the road, proper interval through the Ville. Nothing happened, and we got back inside our wire, our perimeter, and I said, head count, let's make sure everybody's here. We actually gained one Marine. We had one more returning than we started with. And the story was that he snuck out into the Ville, not knowing that all hell was going to break loose with the Tet Offensive starting. And he was scared to death to leave that Ville, because not only did he not know what was in the village at this time when at night, but if he tried to get back into our base camp, he probably would have been shot. So he just hunkered down and waited till daylight, and was relieved to know that here comes a Marine patrol, and he just slipped in there with us. And I wasn't aware of it, but others were. And he was just happy to get back, and he went reported to his commanding officer to accept the punishment. I'm sure he lost a stripe and it cost him some money, but he was alive. So that's my entertaining story about combat in Vietnam.
Did you do anything for good luck?
Yes, is it? Well, okay. Ooh, no four-leaf clovers, no horseshoes, and it's probably sacrilegious to say it was for good luck, but I did wear a St. Christopher's medal. I wore it around my neck. I had a chain with 2 dog tags on it, and I always wore my St. Christopher medal. St. Christopher was the saint who would protect you in your travels. And growing up Catholic, I absolutely believed that if I had that St. Christopher medal, I'd be better protected.
What was the best part of your experience?
Best part of experience, the camaraderie. We were always told as a unit commander, whether I was a platoon commander or company commander, that 10% are going to be bad news for you. And my experience was that, yes, I did have one command where that it was more than 10% who were the bad guys. It was, I had the casual unit at Camp Pendleton after Vietnam, and we had those that had their training interrupted were automatically assigned to the casual unit. And this is, you break a leg in training and you can't continue on with your unit, so you're set in the casual unit until you're healed, and then you start your training over again with a new outfit. And perhaps going home on emergency leave, death in the family, and you're set back in your training, you're assigned to the casual unit. And those were the okay Marines to have in your casual unit, but I also had all those who were in the hands of civilian authorities, in the hands of military authorities. I carried them all on my rolls, and these were the bad guys. And these were also people who were scheduled to go to Vietnam, and they said, I'm not going, and so they would claim that they were a conscientious objector, even though they claimed they were not when they were in boot camp. Or they were bedwetters even. They were not bedwetters in boot camp, but when they got to Camp Pendleton and they were getting ready to go to Vietnam, all of a sudden they became bedwetters. So that was the toughest part of being a Marine infantry officer, other than losing friends in combat. It was very discouraging to know that most of the people in this casual unit had no business being United States Marines.
Did you return home when you left the service?
I did not return home when I left the service. My last duty station was Camp Pendleton, California, and I remembered January in Southern California versus January in Minnesota, and I said, why would I go back home? Obviously, the interviewer happens to be Margie, my wife of 16 plus years, and she's the reason that I'm in Minnesota. This is the girl that I went to 2 years of grade school with and 4 years of high school with, and we started communicating in preparation for a high school class reunion, and the relationship back and forth between California and Minnesota went on for a couple years, and finally I asked Margie to marry me, and it wasn't my smoothest day, and we're both chuckling over this one. But now I'm in Minnesota, finally the home where I grew up with, but it took me a long time to get back home from the United States Marine Corps.
How were you received by family and community?
Well, I know all the stories that are out there about all of our servicemen returning from Vietnam. who were not treated well. A lot of them claim they were spit on. I'm not sure everybody who claims they were spit on actually was spit on, but I know that the reception for tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Vietnam veterans was not a good experience. I can't say that. It's probably a good thing I was not spit on. That would not have gone well. But because I was stationed at Camp Pendleton and living in San Clemente, very conservative, the last city in Orange County, California before San Diego County in Camp Pendleton, California. So not only was I around Marines all day long, I was in a civilian community that was very pro-military for the most part, a very patriotic community. So no, I did not have a negative experience after leaving the Marine Corps.
How about your family? How were you received by your family?
Oh, of course, my family, they were very relieved that I returned relatively intact from Vietnam. My mom went to Mass a lot more than Sundays, praying for my well-being. And my dad was not religious at all. We always described him as somewhere between an atheist and an agnostic. Mom could raise us Catholic, but don't bring me into that stuff. And I don't know that he prayed for my well-being, but whatever thoughts he had, I'm sure were positive, and those of my siblings as well. I know that they were genuinely and vitally concerned about my well-being in the Marine Corps, especially in my service in Vietnam.
How did you readjust to civilian life?
Actually, that transition was not that difficult. I still kept my hair short, and this was 1970 when I left the Marine Corps, and this was post-Beatles. Our Beatles came over and started the long hair, etc., and the hippie movement. I never even briefly. I was convinced that I should grow sideburns, and I was never comfortable with them. So the sideburns didn't last, and hair that was longer than what it is today, not gray, but same length, that was short-lived. It was any longer than this. So I adapted very well to the civilian world. It was not as tough a transition as I know it was for many.
How did the service change you?
Well, okay, I was a patriot to begin with, probably more so than average in the 60s, and I was religious, but not I was religious, but not overly. That's a bad term. Overly religious, but the service actually made me more patriotic, and I was a patriot, and it made me more religious. I was scared, and I wanted to go to heaven when I died, and I wanted to cover my bases. So I was definitely more religious as a result of my service in the Marine Corps.
How did your military service affect your life?
Oh, overwhelmingly positive. I was stationed in the Marine Corps from Quantico to Camp Lejeune to Camp Pendleton to Vietnam with good, solid, patriotic people. And so it served me well. And I served the Marine Corps well also.
What are some of life's lessons did you learn from your military service?
Oh gosh, life's lessons, appreciation for life, foremost. Attention to detail. If you're going to do a job, do it to the very best of your ability. Try and establish friendships as quickly as possible. And I know that almost seems contrary to something I said earlier about being a little guarded, but the friendships I established became perhaps more meaningful to me as a result of my experience in the Marine Corps.
How did your military service affect your feelings about war and military in general?
Ooh, you know what? I know the prevalent story even today is that if you served in combat, you're more likely to be a pacifist today. I guess, I don't know where politics fits into this, but I've always been to the right of center, even in high school and college. And gosh, college in the 60s, early 60s, it was much more fashionable to be to the left of center rather than the right of center. But I always was politically to the right of center, and that has transpired into all aspects of my life.
But how does that affect your feelings about war?
Oh,
and
yes,
military?
I'm off topic already.
Yeah.
Gosh,
War and military.
so
yeah.
easily distracted. I am pro-war. I believe that there's good and evil in this world. I believe many more people are good than evil, but it doesn't take many evil people to change the world for the worse. And I believe those evil people need not only to be controlled, I believe they need to be eradicated. And I'm talking about true evil. I'm not talking about the bad guy who knocks over the 7-Eleven store or whatever. But I've long been an adherent of that maxim that most people attribute to Edmund Burke. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Well, it probably wasn't Edmund Burke, it was probably John Stuart Mill. But I've been an adherent of that saying for a long time. I really do believe all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And I tried to do something. Thank you.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
Well, I'd like them to think that that I was a patriot, that I served my country, that it was an honorable thing to do, and as witnessed by the shirt that I'm wearing right now and the license plate on my car, that I'm a Vietnam veteran, that bumper sticker in the back window extolling the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. I'm very proud of my service in the United States Marine Corps, and I'm saddened that only 1% of young men today go into the military. The draft was abolished in 1975, probably an absolutely necessary thing to do, or America would have been in even more turmoil than it was, and it wasn't good in the late 60s and early 70s, certainly. So I'm glad there's not a draft, but I'm saddened that only 1% of American men today choose to go in the military, whether it be for 4 years or 20 plus years.
What would you like people to know or remember from your stories?
Oh, hopefully they'll look favorably upon this interview, not negatively, and that I'm very, very proud to have served in the United States Marine Corps with some really, really good people. And of course, there is the sad part of friends that were lost. And I think I added one more question for Margie at the end, and I don't know if that's next or if there's something else, but I would like to address some of my couple items that I brought with me.
Not yet. The last question before that one is, what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
Oh, what I wish more people knew about veterans is that, you know what, we probably, for the most part, grew up the same way the non-veterans did. We went to school, we got jobs, we went to church, we had friends, we knew everybody in the neighborhood, and we're just like all those who choose not to serve, but the difference is we decided that the military would be a part of our life, but we basically grew up the same as those who are not veterans.
And the last question is, you have some things with you. Do you want to share some of those with us?
Sure. Actually, I had 3 items picked out, and Margie insisted that I have this one, and this is me as a Marine second lieutenant.
Bring it closer. There.
Could you see that okay?
A little closer even. There. That's good.
Okay. And Margie and I just laughed about that as recently as this morning. If everybody in our high school graduation class could say, "Who is this?" we both think that maybe my very best friend of 76 years, Emmett Kurtz, would say, "Well, that's scary." But perhaps nobody else in our class would recognize this. The second thing is, I don't know if this is going to show.
Closer, much closer. There.
Okay, this is, actually, we're getting ready to go to Vietnam, so what do we need? Desert training. And this is me with the 2nd Battalion, 6th Marine, 2nd Marine Division, Reconnaissance Scout Sniper Team. And we're in Libya, North Africa, doing desert training, and I'm the only one without a cover. And the third thing I'd like to share with you, gosh, I don't know if this is all going to show or not, Margie.
There's the title.
Okay, this is myself and 14 other Marines, and one of them, I'm up here, as well as Mac Tuttle. And Mac Tuttle and I were together. We were in the same battalion at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. We were on the Mediterranean cruise together as Battalion Landing Team BLT-26. We went to Fort Bragg Army Special Warfare School together. We were in Vietnam together. Mac didn't make it. So Margie and I have been to the Wall in Washington, D.C., the Vietnam War Memorial, and here are the rubbings of 5 good friends. And Mac Tuttle is on there. Pat Murray is on there. Pat and I rode the bus together from Washington, D.C. to Quantico, Virginia to start OCS. And we were roommates for 6 months at the basic school. And I knew right away Pat was not going to be an infantry officer. So Pat decided that he would fly. And he went to Pensacola for flight training. And he went down in an A6 over North Vietnam. His remains were not recovered for a long time, and he's buried at Fort Snelling. His remains are buried at Fort Snelling, and we put flowers on his grave, as well as 6 other of Margie's relatives and friends, including her parents, at Fort Snelling. And we always include Pat Murray with flowers, usually 1 or 2 days before Memorial Day. And then my platoon commander, Ralph Hines, is on there, and Dick Hatch is on there. I was actually with him on the morning when he died. He was up in an observation plane that was shot down over a battlefield area, and he was alive upon the plane crashing, but he was covered in fuel, and he was burned horribly and did not survive that. And then actually my best friend in the Marine Corps was Jerry Woodall, and he was a communications officer, and he always felt sorry for the infantry officers because we were in more danger than he was, and yet he was killed in Vietnam, and he was my best friend in the Marine Corps. Although Mac Tuttle was right up there. Oh, and Mac, I was with Mac. We had breakfast together, and it was just a very simple thing. He was going to accompany some Navy doctors and dentists to go down to a friendly village, and they were going to take care of the adults and especially the kids who needed some medical or dental care. And he was in a small convoy, and he was riding in a Jeep and hit a landmine, and I didn't know about it until later that day. And maybe I could have been just going on this routine med visit and going down to a friendly village. Who knows? So anyway, that's not a very good way to end this story.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Happy to have done this. I hope that I don't know who is going to get to see this later. I hope that my daughter and her husband and my grandchildren and perhaps some others will see this, and they'll think that he was a good Marine.